Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. And we have a lady with us today who has definitely done that. She has thought her way to an absolutely epic life through some trials and tribulations that a lot of people would have been taken down by. So Louise Braun Frank wrote this book, and it's called The Gift of Great Sorrow, A Journey Through Pain to Purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, I have not read a book like this in ages, and I could not put it down. I'm very excited for the opportunity to talk to you, for the lessons that all of us are going to learn through this. And I'd like to read just the very beginning page of this to you. How do you move forward when your life is shattered unexpectedly by devastating news? You can sink into despair, or this temporary devastation can become a profound journey where the choices you make bring more meaning, purpose, and promise than you could have ever imagined. The Gift of Great Sorrow by Louise Braun Frank is the story of Louise's 25-year journey with her children, Joshua and Leah, who are diagnosed at the age of 6 with a progressive terminal disease that eventually claimed their young lives. As she walked through the grief of her daily losses, instead of becoming discouraged and overwhelmed, she chose to embody her father's advice. Watch them live. Don't watch them die. Really good advice from your dad there. The Gift of Great Sorrow, we can experience a story that moves beyond tragedy to triumph. Not because the tragedy changes, but because of the transforming power of perspective, love, and courage. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Kara.
Oh my goodness, this is so exciting. This book I can't stop thinking about it. I absolutely can't stop thinking about it. What made you, after going through we'll get into everything, but everything you went through, what gave you the courage to write a book like this?
I didn't know I had the courage. I've always thought, because people have said, oh, you really need to write a book and tell your story. So I always thought someday I would, but after my daughter Leah passed away, I started to rediscover who I was. Who am I without the kids now? And in that process, met someone who said, oh, Louise, I will help you if we just sit down and write it together. So I would write, she would edit, and we went back and forth for 9 months. And I just felt there was an important message. She felt, she's a journalist, retired, and she felt there was an important message that can apply not only to people having children that are ill, but we have aging parents that we're caring for that are digressing, that are losing their abilities. Even other kinds of trauma that I talk about in my book. I talk about sexual abuse. I talk about the loss of many things, the loss of innocence, too young. So there's a lot of trauma that we experience growing up. And I thought that, maybe this was the right time to share my insights and the things that I've learned.
So this is a question you might not get asked very normally. However, in my own life, I have lost the people in my family who were the problem. Quite frankly, they were the problem. And I feel much freer now to talk about it because they're not here. And so through this book, you talked about your husband, and then I saw at the end that he's not around. How much easier was it for you to be real knowing that he wouldn't be reading this?
Didn't think about that question, but I will say that I was grateful that my mother passed away just before I published the book. I think it would have been hard for her to read it. However, at 91, she may never have read it anyway. So yeah, I can see but I think in terms of healing, it has to be said, it has to be written. We all have a story. And whether we're writing it for ourselves or because there's a greater purpose. And for me, it was truly leaving a legacy for Joshua and Leah and their story of courage and of compassion. I mean, I just felt like the challenges that we face in life, regardless of what they are, hearing ways that people can walk through them and hearing ways that I've walked through them can really impact other people. That's what changed my life. When my dad spoke those words, 7 words to me, it changed my life. In that moment, my children are 6 years old, both of them diagnosed. And by 5th grade, they're in wheelchairs. And by 8th grade, they're not feeding themselves. And by, 11th grade, their vision is going, so slowly losing all of their abilities. But keeping an eye on watching them live and not watching them die was huge for me.
I tell you, I fell in love with both kids, and they could not have been more different. That is, I think, shocking to people that two children that are born of the same mom and dad could be so completely, drastically different.
And in your own family, I'm sure you've got brothers and sisters that are completely different. Joshua was an extrovert like I am. Leah was an introvert, more like her father. And so, so raising them, the love languages and everything is so different. And I remember just feeling so connected with Joshua. And the interesting thing about death is to the extent that we are connected to the people who die, that is the extent that we feel and suffer the loss. But in an interesting way, I was so connected with my son Joshua. And you would think that I would have mourned him much greater than even my daughter, who I wasn't quite as connected. We struggled more in our relationship. Mothers and daughters also, right? Sure. But my son was very much like me, extroverted. So the thing is, when he passed away, I actually haven't mourned the loss as much because I really felt like it is complete. I did it all with him. And with Leah, I've always, for the last 10 years, I feel like I've mourned her a lot more, and I think about her a lot more because I didn't feel like it was done. I didn't feel like I did everything I could with her. So.
Well, okay, that's very interesting. Mm-hmm. So your advice would be do it now?
Do it now. And really think about love languages. Think about how people receive love and how you can show love, which is different for everyone. Yeah.
There is a great book. Yes, if you've not read The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, it's an absolute must, because if your love language is I'm going to touch you all the time, and you hate being touched,
right.
It has the opposite effect.
And time. So Leah, my daughter, her love language was time. And so I could never give her enough time. It was always like, Mom, are you leaving already? And I'd be like, gosh, I was here for 15 minutes. And uninterrupted time. So it's interesting, the different love languages and how important it is. Even in the workplace, it's really important to know what your coworkers' love languages are. It's really important to know what your children's love languages are, because if you don't, you think I'm doing all this for you, and they're like, yeah, it's not that big a deal. That's not really what I need. What I need is for you to just sit here with me and watch a game. And you're like, what? I just made dinner.
It's funny. We've got some dear friends that we did a marriage class. We led a marriage class with them. And she was talking about her husband, and she said, what he wants is when he's painting the wall, he wants me to sit there and do nothing but watch him paint the wall. And she's like, how am I supposed to do that? I can't. But for him, that is his love language, that you just sat there and you watched me work. And love is sacrificial.
Right.
It is. Oh my gosh, it's very interesting, the whole love language thing. And please,
I love it. I could teach it.
Oh, you should.
I could teach that class. I absolutely believe 100% in it.
You should. So what is your love language?
Acts of service.
Acts of service.
And as I'm aging, slightly, as I'm aging, words of affirmation, I have come to realize, is also very important to me. So the lovely letters and emails that you've sent me have really encouraged me, and a lot of after writing the book, and about 2 months later, I earned an International Book Award, writing the book from thousands of submissions. Yeah.
Look at that right there.
And so on Amazon, there's lots of, even personally, I've had so many people just say, my gosh, there's a lot of meat. There's a lot of good stuff in here that can be applied in many areas of life. So that's very affirming, and that feels really good.
Well, Brene Brown, you love her too, of course.
Brene, you should meet me.
You should
reach out. You should reach out to us. Yes,
absolutely. And she says that being vulnerable is the most courageous thing you can do. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the most vulnerable book. You were so real, so authentic. Just How did you do that?
That was hard. It was really hard because there are still people living that are affected by this. And, but, I realized that if I wasn't vulnerable, then how, and in telling my story and things that had happened to me and how I dealt with stuff, not always in a great way, if I wasn't vulnerable in those areas, how is anyone going to believe the rest of it? You have to be vulnerable for people to believe, the whole story. So it was not easy. And I'll tell you that even later, recently, I realized that that I have been experiencing some compassion fatigue, which means, and I talk about this in the book, compassion fatigue is just where I'm thinking all the time about the kids, I'm thinking about our life, I'm speaking about it, and my brain is like, okay, we need a vacation from this. We need a little bit of a break from just thinking about that because it's all about sadness and sorrow. When I started the foundation, Joy Through Tears Foundation, which is similar to what Make-A-Wish does. Joy Through Tears provides wishes to caregivers who provide in-home care. So if you're taking care of parents or grandparents, if you have children or someone who's had a major accident and need full-time care hands-on, then what we do is we accept nominations on our website, and we will provide a weekend of respite. And this is the kind of thing that people don't realize how much caregivers need time to just regroup, rejuvenate, refresh, and then come back into the caregiving with a fresh frame of mind. It's so important. So if you have or know someone in your life, even giving them an afternoon off or saying, go for the weekend, we'll take care of, the parent or grandparent or whoever. So we give wishes for in-home care. That's what we do specifically, in-home caregivers. So it's really exciting because last year was our pilot year for granting wishes in the state of Washington. And it's just been amazing, the kind of response people are saying, I didn't realize I needed self-care. And this is the thing, when we're growing up, we think self-care is selfish. I was taught never to take the last cookie, never to take the best piece of anything. So we're taught from the get-go as young kids that we're not worthy. And so self-care is something that is very difficult for us to do. And I realized with my children how important self-care was, how important it was for me to take time to just take a breath. And every day, whether it's getting away for a weekend, whether it's taking a yoga class, whether it's, reading a good book and just like locking yourself into a room if that's what you need to do. But self-care is critical because if we don't take care of ourselves, we're no good to those. We become resentful. And you can tell the people who do not do self-care because they become resentful. They become angry. They become... their resting face is, well, we have an expression. Am I allowed to say that on this? RBF?
RBF, yes.
We'll just do initials. Yeah, you can tell the resting face is RBF, and they're not happy people. The idea of caregiving isn't to lose our life. It's to help other people have a better life. But if we lose ourselves, which I did experience, and you read that about having a breakdown, we're no good to anybody else. I think self-care is a really important factor.
It really is, and there is so much pressure when you're in that position from other people that are judging you and trying to keep you from that self-care. And I know that happened to you, specifically.
So a couple of things that you had asked me earlier, what helped me get through this? There were a couple of things that I knew from the get-go. And again, this is true for business, it's true in other relationships. When you ask the question, why, what response would ever satisfy a parent? Hearing, this is why your children have a terminal disease, this is why they're sick. Or even in a job, like, this is why you got fired, if it's a job you're passionate about, or this is why you didn't get that contract. Generally, the question why puts us in a position of being a victim. And this is one of the things I learned very early on is when you ask why, you become the victim. And there is no power in being a victim. the question I asked myself from the very beginning was how? How am I going to be the mom that Joshua and Leah are going to need? How am I going to raise them to be productive, purposeful people in society? How am I going to guide them through this life where they're going to be probably ridiculed, they're going to be made fun of, they're going to have some really difficult times just adjusting themselves? So the question how is empowering, because there's answers to that. I have power to change that. And that's the question that made a difference in my life. Other than what my father said, it's asking how instead of why. Huge difference. The other thing was reframing. And also, sort of a little bit later on, I realized that when you can reframe the circumstances. So when I started looking at my children's illness, rather than thinking of them as sick, I was thinking of them as different. So they had different abilities, and I was going to have to learn and teach them how to work with those abilities. In the workplace, you've got people that are super successful, and then you have other people that are mildly successful. But what is success? And for me, what was success with my kids? It wasn't to make my kids like everyone else. The greatest destruction of joy is comparison.
Ooh, can you say that again, Ryder?
I think that the greatest, the thing that robs our joy the most is comparison. When I compare my success to yours, when I compare my achievements to yours, when I compare my abilities to yours, I'm never going to see myself as top or as higher level than you, because we tend to be very hard on ourselves. And so when I compared my children to other children, I realized that there's comparing apples and oranges. Some people are gifted in this area and others in this area. So work with what your gifts are. I had to work with my children. Mentally, emotionally, my children were very strong. Physically, they weren't. So how could I bring that out? How could I help them bring it out to make them successful and feel successful?
Gosh, that's amazing. One of the quotes you said is, "We are not meant to stay wounded." Can you elaborate on that?
This quote, so at the beginning of my book, every chapter, it's written in 4 parts, but every chapter has a quote that I truly, that meant a lot to me as I was reading it. So the quote here, I'll just give it to you, I'll just go ahead and look it in here. It's the very first quote that comes in the book, and it says, it's a quote by Carolyn Myss, and she says, "We are not meant to stay wounded. We're supposed to move through our tragedies and challenges and help each other move through theirs. By remaining stuck in the power of our wounds, we block our own transformation. We overlook the greater gifts inherent in our wounds, the strength to overcome them, and the lessons we receive from them. Wounds are the means through which we enter the hearts of other people. They are meant to teach us to become compassionate and wise." So that quote meant so much to me for many years, and still does, that all that we experience is designed to help us become wiser and compassionate, and then to help others get through their wounds.
Ed Milet is one of my heroes, and he says, "The person you can help is the person that you used to be." Mm-hmm. So there are countless people that are going through very similar things. And again, I agree, do not compare. Mm-hmm. However, it's nice to know that you're not alone.
Right.
I'm sure at times you felt like no one in the world could understand me and what I'm going through. Mm-hmm. No one could understand me. Mm-hmm. How do you feel now that you've opened this up? How many people have reached out and said, "Oh my gosh,
right,
I understand you"?
Definitely. A lot of people have reached out to me and said, and invited me to speak and to share some of my own experiences in different ways. And I think that it has validated the purpose of me even sharing my story. And certainly it was very hard for me when Joshua and Leah passed away. Joshua was 23 and Leah was 25 years old. And it was very hard for me to reconcile the whole life that they lived. And as a parent, what happened? It was crazy. It just didn't make any sense. So what I did in order to make some sense of it was I wrote the book, which I knew was going to help people going through difficult times of their own. And then I started the foundation, which for me is the legacy that I'm leaving for Joshua and Leah. So it's a legacy of compassion, of kindness, of teaching people to self-care. And these are two of the things that I've done that for me, it's like, okay, we're not meant to stay wounded, and we're not meant to stay stuck in the clay, in the pit of the sadness. Then we have to find ways to move forward. You never move away from it, you never move, but you can move forward and find purpose. So purposefulness drives me, a lot in this. The other thing I wanted to share is it's really important to find a way to honor the loss. So even as a little girl, when I lost innocence way too young, I had to find a way, and I didn't do it until not too long ago, actually. I had to find a way to look back at that little girl and honor what she experienced instead of stuffing it, and honor that she was helpless, she was vulnerable, she was taken advantage of. But she was a little girl, and it wasn't her fault, because we carry guilt about things that really aren't our fault. I mean, a lot of things. The dynamics in a family, if the family's not healthy. I mean, we, as a child, every one of those children somehow carries some guilt about it, right? So it gave me, so I've taken time to go back and honor the losses, honor the experiences, and say, this is what happened, and it was hard, and it was sad. Now I am stronger because of that. So reframe those moments to say, I am better because I had that experience. Do I wish it on anyone? No, but I'm better because now I have compassion. It's very difficult to have compassion for people if you've never experienced. And so there are people very few that have gone through life without any really hard things, really strong, big challenges. And it's hard for them to have compassion for people who, it's like walk a day in my shoes, right?
And that just ties right into my next question about walking. So tell me about the Camino.
My favorite subject. So when Joshua, my son, passed away, it was, he had gone to Israel 3 years before he passed away. And so I decided that I was going to honor his life and do a pilgrimage to Israel. So I went with a girlfriend, and we brought his ashes, and we left them and actually walked his wheelchair steps, because he had the most amazing, he was a very spiritual young man, and he had the most amazing experience in Israel. So before he passed, he asked me to bring him back to Israel, and I said I will do that. So for 3 weeks, my girlfriend and I had a tour guide, and we walked basically everywhere that he went, and we left ashes and really honored. And it was a great way for me to grieve. It's very difficult to grieve at home. Everyone is grieving. Everyone feels the loss, and I'm comforting people in the loss of my children. So going to Israel was a great way for me to honor Joshua and to grieve the loss of him. When my daughter passed away, before she passed, we had watched a movie, The Way. And the Way talks about the Camino de Santiago in Spain. It's a 500-mile hike from France to the west coast of Spain. And I said to Leah, oh my goodness, I would love to go on that. And she said, I'd love to go with you. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to bring you with me someday. So I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I knew that someday she was going to come with me, and I never even knew if I could do it. I mean, 500 miles. It starts with one foot. It starts with one step. Everything we do in life starts with just that first step. And so I made a plan, and I walked alone, and I had her ashes, and along the way there's altars, and I just would leave her ashes there and say a prayer, and I really had a lot of hard grieving for her because I felt that I missed some things with her. And so I cried when I needed to. I talked with people, and I wanted to know what their stories were, and it was absolutely the best thing I could have ever done. The Camino de Santiago is a great place to go, people going through transition, people not sure what the next step in their life is, going through divorce or loss of some sort. It healed me, to be honest. It really healed me and helped me to be able to move forward. And then I came home. to a very empty house. And the hardest part of coming home was there's no noise. My life had been so busy. There's no noise. There's no activity. Nothing is required of me. Yeah, so transition is difficult for sure. And I came home and it was quiet and the house was empty. And even though, because I had remarried at this point, so my husband was home, but he didn't know what to do. He just wanted to be a support and he wanted to be there for me. I was lost. And the biggest question was, who am I now? Who am I without my kids? I was always their mom, the caregiver, the manager of all things. And I had no idea. So it took a long time for me to really figure out what my place in the world it was. And it was 8 years later before I started my book. And so I had 8 years of travel. I went on 3 more Caminos, just walking and just looking and trying to find myself. But it was just one of the best things I ever did. And I went alone because I had been used to taking care of people. We do anyways. We all take care of someone. We're all taking care of people. So it was great to go alone. Just where you go, there you are. You're not running from yourself. You can't hide from yourself. And you have to face whatever the path shows you.
Yeah. You know, Zig Ziglar, one of his most famous comments is the best way to get what you want in life is to help enough other people get what they want. And so when you stopped looking inward and you started looking forward and how can I serve, talk to us about that.
So very good point, because I did realize that I had a life of service. I had my 30-year successful business, and I lost passion for it. And I knew that it was time to move. It was time to do something different. And that's when I thought, if I write this book, maybe it'll help someone, even one person out there. Right. And it helped Kara.
It did. You must read this book.
Yeah. And then winning the International Book Award was amazing. I was shocked and so pleased because obviously someone was touched by it. And then starting the foundation, the nonprofit, really has made a huge impact, huge difference for me to feel like I have a legacy to leave behind. So again, we're not meant to stay in the wounds, but let's find ways to help others because everyone is wounded in some way. Most of us are. And I'm not done. I have a ways to go, but yeah.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about the foundation. You've been open for how long? When was the first? Do you remember the first gift that you were able to give?
I do. And I'm so excited. So in 2023, we gave our first gift, and it was actually to a beautiful woman, Bree. She was actually my children's caregivers, and one of the requirements of us granting wishes and giving a gift is that they must still be a caregiver. And she, from being with us for 5 years, continued on as a caregiver for other kids and adults that needed help. So we were able to offer her, and I'm so pleased because she was like my kid's sister, and she was my daughter, and still works very hard as a caregiver. So that was the first gift I was so happy to be able to give. And the responses that we're getting from caregivers, most of them are just saying, I had no idea how much I needed this. And I wanted to share a little story. So one of my friends who I hadn't seen in many years, we had lunch together one day, and she said, Louise, my mother was a very healthy woman, very healthy, and a few years younger than my dad. My dad got sick, he had Alzheimer's and just eventually but he did not want to go into a home. And my mother was adamant to keep him home. So she took care of him for a number of years, and she died before he did. Because of fatigue, because of the care that he needed, she lost all her energy, and her life ended. And we decided as a family that we were going to put our father in a home and make sure that we stayed connected and we were involved, but we were not going to ever let that happen again to another family member. So it is exhausting to take care of. I remember just picking my kids up at 25, 23 years old, picking them up like children and putting them in a bath and feeding them, and, you know, all of that. It's exhausting and it wears on you. So we are happy to be able to give a wish of a weekend of respite, spa treatments. They get to bring a friend, and they get to just know that we see them and we honor them.
That probably is it more than anything. I truly believe most caregivers they're invisible. And they feel like it doesn't matter to anyone except for the person they're caring for.
And think about the family. Okay, so there are other family members, there are cousins, there's aunts and uncles that could step in one day a week and help. But it's so, first of all, many caregivers don't allow it. It isn't even that somebody aren't willing. They're like, no, I got this, I'm doing this is my thing.
Because no one will take care of my loved one like me. Is that?
Exactly. And that definitely a big part of it. So I really encourage caregivers out there to ask for help. Ask for it. There are people around you that can give you 5 hours, that can go get a massage, schedule an appointment weekly if you need to. You know, finances are another issue, because in our state alone, state of Washington, we have 880,000 caregivers that are unpaid. 880,000 caregivers that are unpaid. My goodness. So you're talking about aging parents and grandparents. Most children have some care hours that the state provides, but yeah, it's an epidemic.
Well, thank you so much for what you're doing, because, you know, this is going to sound silly, but I can't remember whether it was right after my father died or right after my mother died, but they died within 5 months of each other. And someone sent us a gift card to a restaurant. And that one little act made us feel that somebody noticed. You know, somebody cared. It just is amazing, the human connection. Any living animal, if you put 2 percherons together, the big, huge horses that pull, one of them can pull 5,000 pounds. But when you put them together, they can pull 12,500 pounds. So there's something about the symbioticness of somebody cares, somebody knows, I'm not alone.
Not alone.
So that is beautiful.
And we can be the cause of being alone. We can push people away. We can make it very difficult for other people to step in. I just encourage people that are caring, your life isn't over, and neither is theirs. So if you want to be a better caregiver, do some self-care, and you will be a better caregiver for them.
Put on your oxygen mask, right?
Exactly.
And it is true, and you might feel like you're selfish about it. However, it's the most unselfish thing you can do, because once you get re-energized, then, I mean,
you have more to give.
You do. You do.
Have more to give. Yeah. I know.
Ooh, okay, so how does, if someone is touched and they have been a caregiver and they really would love to provide a weekend for someone, how do they get in touch with you?
Great question. So you can go right to our website and reach out to me. There's a section in there that says contact me. You can go to Joy Through. So through is THRU. So Joy Through Tears Foundation. Joy Through Tears Foundation. You can nominate a caregiver right there. There's also a button, because we're a nonprofit, 501c3. We would love donations that help us to provide more wishes. We're all fully based on the donations that we receive. If you have any special skills or gifts that you'd like to say, you love social media and you'd like to help us with some social media. This is really our second year, our third year in that we've been around. Last year was the first year that we started providing gifts and wishes to caregivers. And now we're really building. We have a great board of directors. We're solid, and we have lots of speaking opportunities. So if you'd like me to come and share with the foundation, we're on a lot of the donor advised groups. So for people that want to donate through charities and whatnot, we have a lot of those that we're connected with now. We also partner with Children's Hospital in Seattle, not Seattle, but Tacoma, Mary Bridge. So we did a silly sock drive for them just because, again, we love to give back. So we do the wishes, absolutely. But we just put together on Facebook this silly sock drive. And our goal was, let's raise 100 pair of silly socks that we can bring to Children's and for the kids to see and put a smile on their face. We raised 610 pair. And then at Christmas, because my daughter Leah passed away December 21st, I decided one of the great gifts somebody gave me was an ornament that allowed me to put a picture of her on her last Christmas with us. So we did an ornament drive for palliative and hospice care because these families were probably having their last Christmas with their little kiddos. So we put together and we received 64 ornaments that we were able to give, and they had 61 kiddos on hospice and palliative care. So we wrapped them, put a beautiful note on them, and gave to each of the families. So we're always looking for ways that we can give back as a foundation.
Just those little things that seem insignificant. You cannot imagine when someone's in that position that the smallest act of kindness, literally the smallest act, is just like, oh, thank you. Oh my God. And they're like, I just gave you a sandwich, right?
Right. Well, this brings up a good point. This is a really good question to ask. How do you support someone who's just had some traumatic news? Maybe their husband or wife has just had a cancer diagnosis, or, child or somebody just died all of a sudden. And I'll tell you, one of the best things that you can do is something tangible. First of all, everybody is honing in on that person who has had the tragedy or tragic news immediately.
For the first week or
two. Wait a month. Wait a month, and then reach out and take them out for dinner or lunch. And the other thing, two things that happened to me. One, my girlfriend Janet, who for so long, I don't know how to sew, but for so long I kept saying to her, I'd love to learn how to sew something, like a Christmas dress or something. So after my kids were diagnosed, she came to my house one day. She said, I want to take you to the fabric store. We're just going to look for some fabric and pick out a pattern, and I'm just going to help you make this dress. I could not imagine in my head how to start or finish any project at that time. I was in such deep sorrow and sadness. And so all I just said was, okay. So we went, we did it. When I finished with that dress, it was like, okay, I guess I can move on. I can keep moving and living. And it helped me get out of that. And somebody anonymously sent me a plant that I had to literally take the bulb, put soil in the container, plant, and watch this plant grow. And they never said who it was. All I knew was new life. It was new life that was in front of my eyes. I could see, and it gave me hope. These are the small things you can do that make someone feel like, they're being seen. I see you. And there's hope for a future. You're going to get through this.
You are, and you have so beautifully, and reading the book is just, can you, in the short time we have left, can you kind of explain how you were able with and they didn't read the whole book yet, and you must, guys, I'm telling you, you must, it's incredible. How were you able to think your way to, you were broke. You were in food lines, right?
Yes,
you were like,
was.
I'm dressed really nicely, and I'm in this food line, and other people are looking at me like, what are you doing here? You don't need food, but you did need food. Mm-hmm. So how were you able to mentally get from there to here, to where you are really making a difference in countless people's lives?
Wow. I think having other people believe in me was huge. Mentors. Sometimes it takes one person to say, you've got this, when you really don't think. Even if you don't believe it, it doesn't matter. You hear it. And then the quotes, starting to read and listen to people around you, accepting help. I remember knocking on church doors because in order to get my electricity bill paid, I had to raise half the money And they gave me a list of churches in my area that I had to knock on, and they would give me a coupon that would say, here's $100, and then the food bank would match whatever I raised. So there was like a $600, $800 bill, and I had to raise $400 of it. And I went knocking on doors, and it was so humbling. It was so humbling and so hard to do, but I had children that I had to do it, right? You do what you have to do. But I'll tell you, it's probably one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. I don't regret a minute of it because it taught me humility, and it taught me that we are this close to being the guy on the street, the homeless guy on the street. We do not know what would take us down. And it gave me compassion. Even though, I think, homelessness is such a pandemic. But I get it. I get how something took those people down, and we're not far from it. We are not that far from that place. We think we are. But what would take you down, Kara? If this didn't take me down, if losing my kids, their father passed away, I had 7 family members from my dad, my mom, my sister, my kids, 7 very close people to me pass away, one every 7 years in a row consecutively. If that didn't take me down, what could take me down?
I learned this on a podcast that I did. One of my guests was saying that there was this study with rats, and they put the rats in water that was above their head, and the rats swam for 30 minutes, and then they just couldn't do it anymore, and they went down to drown. The scientists took the rats out, cleaned them up, dried them off, put them back in the water again, and they swam for hours and hours and hours until they finally just took them out. Because the rats they had hope. Right. They can do, you can do so much more than you believe you can do. It is unbelievable when you put the right stuff in, what comes out. So what is the right stuff for you? Do you have any, of course, your book, of course, you guys, again, I'm going to push, you got to get this book. But what else? Do you have any books, any authors, anybody podcasts that you really listen to bolster yourself?
Right. I'm much more of a tactile person, I have to say. So I'm doing yoga. I'm doing other things that are physical, walking, doing the Camino. I just finished my 4th time doing it. And doing a lot of, I would say I'm learning to listen better. It's not something that I'm very good at and I want to improve on, but learning to listen to other people. That's one of the things I do on the Camino is tell me your story. What brings you here? And really learning from other people's stories because there's so much out there for us. Of course, I love Brené Brown. I really respect her. I love how down to earth she is. She just speaks to my heart in so many ways. And so I don't know that there's one thing that really, or one person.
No, that's Brené Brown. And you guys, she has a special on Netflix. How easy is that? You just turn it on and you watch it, and it's called Call to Courage. And those we need others to speak into our lives.
We do. Listen.
Yes.
It is easy to hear it and then to go out. But listen, there's a lot of wisdom out there. Absolutely. And I think it's the challenge is discerning what's right for me right now. So we want to be here, and we're here, and it's a process. And so I think discerning what is right for me right now. And I'm noticing myself that stepping back is actually where I am right now. It's like, okay, I have a little compassion fatigue. I need to step back and think about what do I want the next 5 years to look like. These are the times that I make changes in my own life is, what needs to change for me to feel centered again? And so, because again, I can be giving. Last year was a full year of giving because the foundation was really just taking off. And my speaking engagements with, I don't know if you know Guy McPherson.
The name is familiar, but I don't know why.
Yeah, he does a podcast that I did with called The Trauma Therapist. He's worth listening to also. And Logan Crawford, who's an award-winning actor and has a podcast. I recently did a podcast with him that was also, he's also got some great work that he's doing. So, yeah, I've just been doing a lot of that. And now it's like, time for me to take a breath. And then let's be intentional about what we're doing next. Instead of just digging into everything, you don't have to say yes to everything.
Yeah, it's a recipe for disaster. Yeah, learn the word no.
The word no, or just say yes when yes is the right answer. And it could be yes or not now.
Well, somebody told me the way to figure this out and you ask if you could say the words on here, but when someone, if I was to say to you, hey, I've got free tickets to Spain, we can go do the Camino, and it's in your time frame and all that, and your answer, look at your face, your answer is hell yes.
I know.
Right? If the answer is hell yes, then it's yes. If the answer is, then no.
Right.
No for now.
No for now. Not now.
Yeah. Any last words of wisdom for our people?
I saw something recently on a show that really spoke to me. Because, again, we're talking about helping others through their difficult times. And this quote, I just loved it. And it really, really spoke to me because I'm a fixer. So I think, tell me your problems and I'll fix them for you. But this was a great response. She said, when this gal was having an anxiety attack, and this young woman came up to her and said, do you want help? Do you want to be heard? Or do you need a hug? And it was like, yes, I need to get really good at saying that. Not, here, let me help you. So when you find yourself in a position where someone is struggling, do you want help? Do you want to be heard? Or do you want a hug? It's a great response.
Great advice. Thank you so much. I adore you.
Love you already.
I know.
Thank you so much, Kara. This has really meant a lot to me, and I'm so excited that we're getting to know each other.
I know.
It's only the beginning.
I know. We get to hang out together a little bit here. So thank you all very much. And please, guys, if you think that this will benefit someone, please share it, please like it, and please put comments. We will respond to your comments. So thank you so much.